Hi everyone, hope everyone's well. If you're in Europe or America or China, I hope you're surviving the hot weather. For all of us in the UK here, it's a bit rubbish to be honest, and it's slashing down with rain here again. But never mind. I surround myself with peacocks in my office. They always cheer me up and inspire me, as you probably know from all my Juno work. So it's such a miserable rainy afternoon. I decided to make a video and talk about the Nodal Ingress and the Grand Cross that it forms, that Grand Cardinal Cross. So as we know, the nodes have changed from the Taurus Scorpio axes into Aries and Libra on the 17th of July. That was the mean node. That was the true node. The mean node actually changed earlier on the 12th. And as we know, that the nodes wobble about a little bit, so we can work with the actual node itself or the average of the node's placement. So that's the mean node. And it's going to be supercharged. The next week or so is going to be really supercharged because that nodal shift forms an exact Grand Cross with a Sun-Pluto opposition on the 22nd of July, this weekend, this Saturday, depending on your location. And of course, we know that, the 29th degree of a sign, it's that anaretic degree. So it can feel a little bit edgy, a little bit hesitant, which I'll talk about more later. But what's important, it's also triggering the degree of the hybrid Aries eclipse that we had in the 20th of April. So the next few days, the next week or so, it could feel like a whole blend of excitement, high anxiety, trepidation. On the 29th degree of a sign, it feels like you've got one foot in what's comfortable and perhaps one foot sort of edging into new, fresh territory. So it can feel a little bit anxious, anxiety inducing, so to speak. And it can feel a little bit crisis laden. That's the nature of a Grand Cross. And I'll talk about that more later. And overall, it may feel incredibly exciting, but a bit overwhelming, quite pressured, exhausting, and as though you're having one crisis, one problem laden on top of another. But in any case, things are going to start moving because we're going to be forced to act, forced to initiate change after a long time of perhaps feeling quite stuck with those nodes across that fixed Taurus Scorpio axis. So let's look a bit more about why this might be, what areas of life it might impact, and let's just break it down a little bit before we all start feeling that urge to fight back and do and get going after, a long period of stagnation for some of us, I think. So let's talk about the nodal axes, and hopefully you can see the chart there up on the screen. And I've highlighted the Grand Cross, as you can see, and the nodal axes is in red there. So the nodal axes, the nodal cycle takes around 18.5 years to travel around the zodiac. So it spends around 1.5 years in each sign. So we're just moving away from that Taurus Scorpio axes where we've been focused on for the past 1.5 years, since around December 2021. And we're moving into Aries and Libra territory. And that's where our personal, our social, and our collective zeitgeist and our focus is going to be. So as I said, that North Node's been in Taurus since around December 2021, very fixed. That Taurus Scorpio axis is fixed. What have we been focused on? What have we been fixed on, personally and collectively? Cost of living, resources. It's very Taurus Scorpio. And it's about money. Money's been an incredibly prominent topic for many of us. And it's about our earning power, which is a very Taurus theme. And for a lot of us, we're not earning enough. there's not enough coming in to cover the vast cost of our resources, which is food, power, electric, etc., etc. And hence in the UK and other places in the world, you know, people are on strike. You know, in the UK, we've got doctors on strike, train drivers on strike, you know, teachers on strike, because they're not earning enough to cover the cost of their resources. What's coming in is not enough to cover what's going out. Or perhaps it is, but leaves nothing to enjoy any form of quality of life. And again, that's a very Taurus theme. You know, Taurus likes to enjoy, you know, quality things, quality experiences. But now the nodes have shifted and our focus will gradually start shifting as well, probably with a great big, you know, smack in the face over the next week or so with that Grand Cross. But we're now going to start thinking about how we're going to get going. You know, let's fight more for our fairness and fight more for balance. You know, it's a very dynamic energy across Aries and Libra. And we've probably compromised for too long, a lot of us. I think we've felt a sort of lack of inertia, felt quite stagnated. So now we've got around 1.5 years until about January 2025 for this nodal presence. So let's talk about what might happen. So if we think about solely just, you know, the Aries Libra axes, it's about me, Aries, you, Libra, and us, because of course it's all about the balance between me and you, which equals us. So I think we're going to see a lot more focus on how we assert ourselves with others, how we ensure our own needs are met as well as the needs of our partners. And if we can balance these needs, our relationships can thrive. Because of course oppositions in a chart often focus, you know, sort of force us to sort of hit one end or hit the other, a little bit like a seesaw, and we get that imbalance. And the beauty of an opposition is finding the balance between both signs, you know, utilizing the best qualities of both signs. And that's a very similar theme to the South Node and the North Node, of course, when we're talking about the nodal axes. You know, the South Node, if you like, is, you know, all the qualities we come into this incarnation or this life that we're comfortable with and feel familiar with. And the North Node's always pulling us to those qualities that are going to help us with personal growth and personal evolution. And they're not so comfortable. They challenge us. You know, they might feel a bit difficult or uncomfortable. But that, you know, without that challenge and degree of uncomfort, pushing us out of our comfort zone, which the North Node does, we don't grow, we don't evolve. But we don't want to go fully, you know, hell bent on just being the pure North Node, for in this case being pure Aries. We want to try and get a balance, you know, take all the beautiful qualities of Libra and balance them with all the incredible qualities of Aries. It's all about balancing the opposition, isn't it? It's about give and take. So in this case, this is where we might find some resolution, or at least more negotiation, where we've perhaps felt stuck in the past and have begun to grow very frustrated and very resentful about nothing happening. You know, what is the government doing? You know, what's happening in my personal life? Why am I feeling stuck within my relationship? Why are my finances feeling stuck? So we've got this cardinal energy coming in and, yeah, a chance to move forward. What's really interesting about this Nodal Ingress, you know, hitting 29 degrees of Aries, is it triggers the degree of that hybrid eclipse from April earlier this year. And as we know, the effects and the energies from eclipses can sort of be active for a long time, and planets go over that degree and sort of trigger and reactivate all the themes and all the energy from the eclipse. So I think what we're going to see here are a lot of themes echoed from what happened in April. So perhaps think back in your personal life, what happened around the time of that eclipse, and also, you know, sort of collectively, you know, in the news. Let's, you know, have a quick look at that as well. So yeah, Mars is conjunct that eclipse degree. And if we think back to that eclipse, you know, it squared Pluto and it was sort of widely conjunct Jupiter. And it was very pushy, a very pushy eclipse, you know, very cardinal eclipse, belief driven, a very confident eclipse, because Aries is confident, it's impulsive, and it, you know, it just wants to get ahead and it wants to do, it doesn't want to think necessarily about the consequences. But a lot of intense drive and determination, full of initiative, okay, which this Grand Cross will be, but in a slightly different way. In Aries, of course, it's about the self, it's about I, and it's very martial, it's about fighting for what you believe in, isn't it? And with that eclipse being tied into Pluto and Jupiter, you know, very much about power struggles, pushing back, fighting for what you believe in and what you want, okay? So we'll see some very similar themes. And again, just think back to that time and think to what any, you know, about any challenges that you had around that time, or perhaps any new initiatives that you experienced then. And if we look back to the news then as well, in the UK, the actual day after the eclipse, Dominic Raab was he resigned due to all the claims around bullying when he was in office. You know, that's incredibly Aries and Jupiter and Pluto all combined, you know, that really pushy energy. On the 20th, the actual day of the eclipse, Japan announced plans for long-range missiles due to increasing China tensions. And, you know, for many years since the Second World War, Japan's been a very peaceful country. On the 18th, a couple of days before the eclipse, in the Ukraine, Putin actually visited the Kherson and the Luhansk regions. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of developments going on in Ukraine. In the US, documents were leaked from the Pentagon regarding the Ukraine mission. Earlier in April, Finland joined NATO. And we also saw conflict in Sudan with lots of international evacuations. So all quite martial Aries themes. And it's important to note, I think, with the ongoing crisis in Ukraine and Ukraine's bid to become a member of NATO, NATO has its North Node at 28 Aries, so it's about to undergo a nodal return, which will be exact in September 2023, later this year. The last time it had its nodal return was February 2005. And what we saw then was intensified dialogue, which is a status highlighting aspirations for membership from another country. And that was triggered by Ukraine's then aspirations to join NATO. So we're seeing another turn of the wheel here. So we're perhaps another step closer to NATO, Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. And for anyone interested in the Saros series, you know, the eclipse families, this one is part of the Seven North family, according to Bernadette Brady. You all have to get her amazing book, The Eagle and the Lark. You can find all the information about the eclipse families in there. And this says that it's a central family of eclipses, sudden sexual passions, time to birth, procreative drives. It's not subtle, it's Aries, isn't it? Can be caught off guard, be confronted with your own deep passion, which may have been hidden for many years. So it's very much about going after what you want. But if we move back to the Grand Cross, let's look at that in a little bit more detail. And you should see there still that I've got the chart up there, and the Sun-Pluto opposition is highlighted in blue. So we can see this square shape, this grand box square, formed by these 4 planets at the 29th degree of Cancer, Capricorn, Aries and Libra. It's proper go-getting energy. That's what cardinal energy is. And it's going to perhaps feel a little bit strange after feeling so stuck for a while. And of course, we're on those anaretic critical 29th degrees. And like I said, it feels a bit edgy. You're on the precipice of change, but just sort of not quite sure about moving forward. Or you could be incredibly excited and impulsive about moving forward. But we can see there, you know, you've got that Grand Cross split by 2 oppositions, the oppositions between Sun, Pluto, and the South Node and North Node. And I always try and describe a Grand Cross to my students. It's a little bit like a squash court. If you imagine playing a game of squash, and there's a ball being bounced from wall to wall to wall to wall, and it can't get out of the court, okay? And the energy of this ball is bouncing and hitting each wall. And it's just, you know, it feels like there's one crisis after another. And it's like, how do I get out of this crisis? There's so much energy bouncing around, you know, but it can't quite get out. And if you ever, for people of a certain age like me, if you remember when home computers first came in and I had one of those ancient BBC Bs, and one of the early computer games was Bat and Ball, and you just had a tiny little white dash at the bottom of the screen, and the ball was bouncing around the screen. It's a little bit like that, okay? So it can feel like, oh, there's just so much energy going on, or I've got so many problems or so many projects, and it's overwhelming, or I don't know where the energy's going to go. But because it's cardinal, it's going to force us to act. It will jolt us to move forward and out of inertia. And it's like a call to action. And it's almost like taking a leap of faith because it's on those anaretic 29th degrees. So we are going to see crisis without a doubt in certain areas of our world, whether personal and you know, social. And I'm just thinking about the UK. We've got the by-elections coming up tomorrow, which is Thursday. The Tories aren't predicted to do well. So I do think we might be looking at a political crisis for Rishi Sunak and the Tories, perhaps. And if any of you saw my Venus Retrograde talk from a week or 2 ago, and I did mention this because Venus is going to retrograde over Rishi's North Node. So I do think there perhaps could be an issue around his popularity, which isn't great to start with, let's face it. And, you know, if we think about this Grand Cross, it's got a Sun-Pluto opposition, and the Sun in mundane astrology is about leaders. So there is going to be some leadership crisis, I do think. But because of the nodes now moving into Aries and Libra, I do think there's potential for negotiations and perhaps resolution around resolving all the strikes that the UK has ongoing. Just thinking to Afghanistan, and literally just before I started recording this, I read that Afghan women are starting to protest against the beauty salons and hair salons being closed down. And I mentioned that in my Venus retrograde video as well. So they're starting to protest. The Taliban are already responding with water cannons and stun guns. So expect that to build up in the next week or so, especially as the Afghanistan charts are all being triggered by this Grand Cross. So to summarize, the Grand Cross, because it's Cancer, Capricorn, Aries and Libra. Cancer, Capricorn, it's about the old, it's about everything that's inherited, it's ancestral, it's about our family ties. And because we've got that Sun-Pluto opposition across it, it's anything holding us back or that has power over us. In Cancer Capricorn also, there's a need for security, isn't there? It's where we feel safe. So then we look at Libra and Aries. Aries, just wants to get out there and explore new territory, which Cancer Capricorn doesn't necessarily want to do. So this nodal axis is bringing in some new, fresh energy that might feel a little bit scary, to be honest. Even if we felt stuck, it's always a bit scary moving into new territory, trying out new things, trying to find new solutions. But I think one incredible example that we saw last weekend was the men's Wimbledon, the tennis final, where 20-year-old Carlos Alcaraz beat long-standing champion Djokovic. The end of an era, I think you saw there. Okay, Djokovic has held reign over the entire tennis world for many, many years. And I absolutely love Djokovic. He's the most incredible all-round athlete. Apart from all the amazing contribution he makes to charity and religious institutions around the world. But that's for another chat sometime, perhaps. But we did see that fresh, new Aries 20-year-old guy come in and beat Djokovic, who's been at the top of that Capricorn mountain for many, many years in tennis. That is the nodal shift in pure action. We're going to see an active shift in our personal and business relationships. Keep an eye on family relationships as well. From many people I've been speaking to, friends, family, and clients, there's been a lot of family issues going on for a while. So I think we'll see a shift in them. And of course, that's the Cancer theme there. Sun Pluto, it's about letting go. And it might be painful to let go, but let go we must, because we can't grow, evolve, and move on unless we let go of certain situations. And again, instead of feeling so stuck, I think we're actively going to seek new solutions and find sort of resolutions over our finances and relationship issues. We'll be less tolerant. There's going to be less inertia. We're going to get moving, and it's going to be about sort of just getting on and doing things now. And whatever problems you have, it is a little bit about taking a leap of faith now. Let's just get those problems resolved, face them head on, which is a very Aries thing, isn't it? And then we can move on. And then literally a minute just before I started recording this, I had a thought. And I did mention about the Grand Cross. You can feel a bit caged in, or, you sort of, there's so many problems on top of you, and which one do you deal with first? The soft aspects to a Grand Cross often offer resolution for the tension. And there's a lovely water trine from the Sun to Neptune. Okay, so the Sun's at 29 Cancer, Neptune's at 27 Pisces, I believe. We can't fix everything, can we? We can't. We can try and troubleshoot, and Grand Crosses are brilliant for troubleshooting. Keep that in mind. But we can't always fix everything. And one way of moving on is sometimes to simply just let go. And that's a very Sun, trine, Neptune theme, I think. Sometimes we just have to shrug our shoulders, c'est la vie, and let go. So there's always that option as well, amongst all the creative solutions that we're all going to come up with as we move forward. So I hope that's been of interest and it made sense, and I'll be doing something in the next week or two to add to this. Take care, everyone. Bye.